Hello, welcome to Minecraft Evolution. I'm Unix, and in this episode we'll be talking about Alpha 1.2.6. So this will be the third episode, starting with Alpha 1.0 and 1.1. Alpha 1.2 was released October 30th, 2010, and as you can see that's one day before Halloween. And so the theme overall for this update was, I guess, sort of Halloweeny, sort of scary, and we'll see why that's true. But so this was released in 2010. And it lasted 51 days up until then beta 1.0. So this is actually the very last major update of Minecraft Alpha. And so the final version of 1.2 was 1.2.6, and that's the one I'm playing. It was released December 3rd, 2010. Yeah, let's look at some of the features. And so the most important one by far is the addition of the Nether. And so let's actually take a look. Okay, so we are here in the Nether, and as you can see, it is a very nightmarish looking environment here. And so before we actually take a look at the terrain in a clearer view, let's talk about some of the blocks that were added. And so starting with netherrack here, which is this red block, and it's sort of the main block of the Nether that gives us its red color. And in the original development, it seemed like Notch liked calling it Nether Stone or Bloodstone. But it seems like by the time it actually came out, it was changed into the rack, but that's just a neat trivia, I guess. Then this other block here is called glowstone, and it gives off light. It is a full block source of light, which is, I believe, the first one in the game. But it's not the only one in this version, and we'll see later another full block that gives off light. But it was slightly different from the glowstone of today, because if I was to break this, which I'm not going to, it would only give back one glowstone dust, so not 3 or 4. And so that kind of sucks, but to even add more insult, it would take not 4, but 9 glowstone dust to craft back a glowstone block. And so that means that for every 9 glowstone blocks that you actually break, you can only craft back 1 of them. So yeah, these blocks are, I guess, very, very valuable. Next we have your soul sand, which slows down your movement, the player movement, and it's also technically lower than every other block, and so that led to this sort of weird, not glitch, but I guess unintended consequence, is that if you shift and then you try to go up to another block that's like normal, you can't. So I'm here trying to shift onto this cobblestone, but I can't. But if I let go, then I can go like normal. But that's just I guess, an interesting glitch that happened in this version. And finally, the Nether added 2 mobs, one of which you're seeing right there. That's the Ghast, but also zombie pigmen, which were neutral mobs that will stay neutral until you attack them, and then they would all get mad at you, and it's very scary. And so the Ghasts are crazy. They spawn everywhere, it seems. I feel like they spawn more than in the modern versions of the game, and they're really annoying. They make a lot of sounds. The gas actually shot at your camera and not your player. And so what I mean by that, and I'm going to show a video here, is that if you had F5 mode on, the gas could basically miss you every single time if you're careful about where you position your F5 camera. Next we have here the Pigmen, and so they are called zombie pigmen in this version, although in modern versions of Minecraft you might now know them as zombified piglins. So a slightly different name, but they're supposed to be the same mob. But as you can see, the zombie pigman has this like kind of green, gooey stuff, it seems, exposed on its body. And originally this was blood, and so the original zombie pigman skin was red. Had these like red marks on it. But then Notch changed it because he thought it would be funner to try to be scary without using blood. If you search up Alpha 1.2.0 preview, it is a preview version of Alpha 1.2 that Notch gave to certain game journalists, and you can see a video in which they go into the Nether, and you can see the zombie pigmen have different skins. As well, you'll actually find that the Nether was once called the Slip. And so when you entered into the portal, it would say entering the slip. And the last piece of information is that if you manage to witness a pigman dying, whether you killed it yourself or not, it will actually drop 0 to 2 cooked pork chops. And so this is a pretty good source of food as long as you didn't die in the process of collecting it. Definitely much more useful than the rotten flesh that we get these days. Alright, back to the overworld. Okay, so this version also added fishing. And this might confuse a little bit because In previous version, Alpha 1.1, it added fishing rods, but you couldn't get fish. The fishing rod did not work correctly. Now we actually have a working fishing rod, and so let me show you, I guess, what fishing looked like. So there we go. There were no enchantments yet. There was no kind of more detailed animation like there is today. So fishing was a little bit boring, not gonna lie. And you could only get one type of fish, which well was just called raw fish. But you could stick it in a furnace, and you would get cooked fish. And so the raw fish would heal 1 heart. The cooked fish is gonna heal 2.5 hearts. While messing around with this version, I found a weird glitch with the fishing rods. And so as you can see here, I have a fishing rod that I've used, so this has some durability. And this fishing rod has not been used. And if I actually try to stack them, they actually do stack together, which is really weird. And then if I split them apart, I basically just replenish the durability on my other fishing rod for free. And so I don't know when this glitch is patched, but that's just something you can do in this version. Another thing that was added here was the clock. And so normally above ground, the clock is not very useful. I mean, you can just look outside and see where the sun is and where the moon is. But if you were underground, this clock can be sort of useful for telling what the daylight cycle is looking like outside. Although I feel like it's sort of an underused item throughout Minecraft's history. Okay, this version also added pumpkins and jack-o'-lanterns, and so this again I think has a little bit to do with the whole Halloween theme of this version. And so pumpkins were naturally generated throughout the world in these small batches, very similar to how you see it today. But do keep in mind that pumpkins could not produce pumpkin seeds. And so that means pumpkins were not renewable uh, in this version. You had to actually go out and get them. And when you can't sprint and there's not that many fast ways of traveling in this game, it can be very tedious to find pumpkins. I was searching for like 30 minutes and I was only able to get like 13 of them. But if you take a pumpkin and you put a torch, you get a jack-o'-lantern here. And the jack-o'-lantern is the other block that I was talking about that gives off a source of light. You could wear the pumpkin, you cannot wear the jack-o'-lantern. But so if I wear the pumpkin here, you'll see it creates this effect on my view. You cannot do the same for the jack-o'-lantern, but I do want to show you that the jack-o'-lantern has this weird glitch, which is that in your inventory, it looks exactly like a normal pumpkin, but when you place it down, it looks like a jack-o'-lantern. Okay, although the Nether kind of came off as the main feature here of this version, I'd actually reckon that these features here maybe made a bigger impact on the game. And so that was the addition of new terrain generation, of biomes, and of grass shades. And so I'm gonna go over to my minecart rail over there, and we're gonna go off into the distance into a new unexplored land that I had not created prior to this version. So in Alpha 1.1, I played here normally, but then once I went on to Alpha 1.2, it had new biome generation. So any new unexplored chunks from before that I went into would have the new world generation, and it's going to show you kind of a sharp cutoff from the rest of the world. It's going to look kind of jarring, but this is the new terrain generation code. And so I'm going to wait until it's day before I show you that. So I'll see you then. Okay, let's go. So as you can see, this mountain here is cut off very unnaturally. That's because this is the edge of the chunks that I loaded in the previous version, and now these are new chunks that I've loaded. And as you might notice, the grass is now a little bit darker than what it used to be in the previous versions. And a lot of people that like old versions of Minecraft might be sad about this, because that bright green grass is something that's iconic of the old versions of Minecraft. So I'll show you on screen a comparison between previous version and current version in terms of the grass in my world. And like I've mentioned, the terrain's changed slightly, the terrain generation. What mostly changed is now the addition of biomes. And so you'll find that there are areas called deserts and tundras. In previous versions, there really was no biomes. It was constant terrain generation all around. But now you'll find that there's sort of variation in the world, which I think is a good thing. The tundra is sort of a adaptation of winter mode, which I talked about in the first episode, which is sort of this small feature that was in a few versions of Minecraft that made certain worlds that you generated completely full of snow. And so with the addition of biomes, you'll find that the grass also changes the shading, as well as the leaves. I should mention that according to the biome that you're at. So in the desert, the grass is a little bit like more brown. But yeah, all right, let's head back. Despite all the additions in this version, a couple things also had to be removed, and so slime spawning was one of them. So slimes are still in the game, technically, but they can no longer spawn. You might see in my video about my mob farm that I made that a couple slimes did spawn. No longer is this the case. Like I mentioned, winter mode was removed. That doesn't happen when you load a world. And also, and let me show you here a screenshot of what I'm talking about, they removed the infamous play tutorial level button that was in old versions of Minecraft. It never actually meant anything. There was no tutorial level, but yet the button was there and gave maybe some players hope that one day there would be a tutorial level. Unfortunately not. Alpha 1.2.6 also added a couple cool features like pressing F1 to hide your HUD. You could also press F5 and then press F1 to show the front-facing camera here, which is cool. I honestly did not know you could do this. Furthermore, the ability to take screenshots became official, so you couldn't just press F2, you have to press F1 and F2, and there you see we'll take a screenshot. Also, and this is really, really important, coordinates were added to the F3 menu, and so I think this made the game a lot easier for a lot of players. If you have seen my previous video about my mob farm that I made, you saw that I had to go into NBT edit to basically, or NBT Explorer, I should say, to figure out my coordinates because I needed to build a specific mob trap at a specific location. And so these coordinates would have made it a lot easier to have done that without external tools. Featured Unix here. I also forgot to mention that the mods and texture packs button was added, and so there actually was no ability to select mods, but you could select texture packs. And so this made it easier to have different looks to the game. And something that I figured out is that you don't necessarily have to use a pack that was for alpha. This is a pack that was made for beta 1.7.3, but it still works on alpha just fine. And I think maybe this is the first way that a lot of players entered into the world of actually modifying the game other than just playing it like normal. So yeah, so this is a big addition. Also, and I'll show you here another video, a red glow was added to the sunset. This was not in previous versions of the game, and so I think that's a nice atmospheric touch as well. According to the wiki, a new creeper sound was added to this version. Now, to be honest, I'm not sure I've noticed it, and I tried to go out of my way to find it, and I don't know, it didn't seem like it was a new sound, so I'm not too sure about this. But they did add bows to the skeleton model, and so I have here a video where you can see just that. In the previous versions, the skeleton's hands were bare and they just shot arrows out of nowhere, and so this looks much better. And finally, stairs and also furnaces are a little bit easier to place. In the previous versions, they sort of went in whichever direction they wanted to. It felt like you couldn't really control it. Now they go in the direction that you place them in, which makes it a lot easier. Before we go on to beta 1.0, which is going to fix this bug, there was this weird thing that you could do, which was store items in your crafting grid like this. And so normally you'd expect my items to drop when I do this, but no, I can move around and open them up my inventory, and the items are still there. So there's a little bit of extra storage. Fortunately, it's fixed in the next version, but that was just something cool you could do. But yeah, beta 1.0 will be next, the first beta version. Honestly, not much changes, if anything at all. So the video will be short. But yeah, that'll be the next video. All right, thank you so much for watching.